Good evening, everyone, and welcome to this in-person meeting of the Melrose School Committee. The date is July 27th, 2021. The time is approximately 7 p.m. My name is Jen McAndrew, Chair of the School Committee, and please note that this meeting is being broadcast and recorded. For purposes of taking attendance, Ms. Hogan, would you please call the roll?
Mr. Obremski?
Present.
Mia Broder?
Here.
Ms. Driscoll?
Here.
Mr. O'Connell?
Here.
And Ms. Rozzi Thomas?
Here.
Ms. McAndrew?
Here, with 6 members here and 1 absent. A quorum is present, and we are ready to proceed. Let's start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you all. Just a reminder for our those watching on MMTV, if members could please speak directly into your mics when you're speaking, that really helps with the audio connection. Thank you. First up tonight is the report out from our executive session on June 22nd, 2021. And we have 4 items to report out from that executive session. At the school committee meeting executive session on June 22nd, the school committee voted unanimously, 6 yes and 1 absent, to approve the successor 3-year memorandum of understanding with Teamsters Local 25, International Brotherhood of Teamsters Administrators Unit. The highlights of the agreement are as follows: adding steps to the salary schedule to recognize years of service and encourage retention of experienced administrators. On July 1st, 2022, a 2% increase on base salary, and on July 1st, 2023, a 2% increase on base salary. In addition, to allow our administrators to work up to 6 days remotely during summer break with approval of their supervisor to ensure building coverage. And addition of new evaluation language to align with Department of Elementary and Secondary Education requirements. Secondly, the school committee also voted unanimously, 6 yes with 1 absent, for a 2-year memorandum of understanding with the MEA Unit B, the school secretaries. The highlights of this agreement are as follows: July 1st, 2021, 2% increase in base salary. July 1st, 2022, 2% increase in base salary. Effective July 1st, 2021, adding the following amounts to each of the weekly rates for the bargaining unit positions after the 2% is applied for only the first year of this agreement. Steps 1 through 4, $5. Steps 5 through 9, $10, and step 10, $15. Third, the school committee voted unanimously, 6 yes with 1 absent, to a 1-year MOU with MEA Unit C, the paraprofessionals. The highlights of this agreement are as follows: July 1st, 2021, 3% increase in base salary, an additional $100 added to step 5 after the percent increase. The school committee also voted unanimously, 6 yes with 1 absent, to a 1-year side letter agreement to support a stipend for guidance counselors at the secondary level to provide 5 additional days of support during non-school days for the 2021-2022 school year. This funding was voted in the fiscal 2022 city budget. Thank you. And that concludes the update from the executive session. Next is the public comment portion of our meeting. This is the portion of our meeting where the public may comment for up to 3 minutes each on matters before the committee. Please identify yourselves and sign in if you're in person. During this time of transitioning back to in-person meetings, we are also offering a remote public comment option, and we'll switch back and forth if and as needed. All comments should be limited to opinions on issues within the school committee's authority, and speakers shall limit their remarks to matters on the agenda for tonight's meeting. Without objection, the public comment period is open. I'm going to also just unmute here for the remote option. Are there any members of the public who wish to address the committee at this time? Please come forward and just sign your name and address, if you will, and identify yourself. Thank you.
Michelle Thomas. So I wrote this down because I'm really upset and I want to make sure to get my point across. So, members of the school committee, I wish to express my deep concerns regarding your decision to require masks for the start of the school year. Some of you listening may not be aware, but Melrose has already decided to place a mask mandate. This decision was made without input and feedback from those who are most affected, the children and parents of Melrose. Commissioner Riley's statement on June 22nd that stated, "No restrictions in the 21-22 school year unless something happens with the trajectory of the virus, and will work with the Department of Public Health." Nothing has changed. As you're aware, on May 27th, the DESC released an update to its COVID-19 guidelines, stating that for the fall, all districts, sorry, I'm trying to shorten it a little here. For the fall, all districts and schools will be required to be in person, full-time, 5 days a week, and all DESC health and safety requirements will be lifted. This includes all physical distancing requirements. DESC further stated, "We will collaborate with the Department of Public Health to issue any additional health and safety recommendations. For example, masks for elementary school students that cannot be vaccinated." Again, nothing has changed. For a full year, our children never saw one another's face. They did not see their teachers' or administrators' faces. They were masked, placed behind plexiglass, and separated from meaningful interaction. Masks were not only mandatory in schools, but in most public places. We were told repeatedly by our public health authorities that masks were the key to fighting the pandemic. This notion was repeated every day, so our children complied with it. They had no choice, as very few of their parents questioned it. Some adults who refused to wear masks in public were arrested for it and sent the clearest message possible: comply or face consequences for not doing what you are told. So most people did. However, the question remains, do masks really keep us safe from COVID-19? What is the downside of wearing masks? Why make children wear masks? We have known since the beginning children are not at significant risk from COVID-19, nor are they at high risk for spreading it. On June 30th, Mass Teacher Association President stated, "Please don't be swayed by anecdotal stories of individual challenges that students are having with the mask. As a whole, they have handled it beautifully, and what they've learned is that when they take an action, they are protecting their peers and their community. Obviously, anecdotal opinion and not science is behind such a mask policy. Children are easy to command. They do not know any better. Authority figures can make them do anything, and so you did, based on fear, poor science, and lack of sound judgment. For over a year, we have asked children to make sacrifices to make the adults feel safer. I'm not here to talk only about the merits, about the lack thereof of wearing masks at Melrose Public Schools. I'm here to ask the school committee, are you making a decision to require students to wear masks in K through 12 based on your personal beliefs, or have you gotten feedback from your constituents, the very people who elected you? Have you pooled the children of Melrose and asked them how they feel? Was the will of the people of Melrose to ask you, our school committee, to decide on making our children wear masks in school, despite the DESC not requiring it at this time, and Governor Baker not requiring it, masks at this time? Sorry. If the opinion of Melrosians on masks were solicited by the school committee, when, where, and how? I was not consulted to offer my opinion to the school committee, nor were any of my friends, families, and neighbors. Many of the same people here tonight, as we all came together after Christmas vacation 2021, to tell you time after time again that we did not want pool testing. And again, we were ignored then, and over $250,000 was spent on your beliefs. Our children do not want to wear masks in school. Myself and hundreds of other parents in Melrose do not want their children in masks. Please listen to the people of Melrose, ask for input, and do not make any decisions on masks before hearing us out. Isn't that exactly what your job entails? I know the CDC came out with new guidelines today. None of the new information affects Melrose. We are not in any of those hotspot areas. Under the advisement of my attorney, I am formally asking what steps will be taken when my children and many other children in Melrose show up to school with no masks. Will they be allowed in? Will they be suspended? What repercussions will there be? What does the city of Melrose plan to do when they deny their children the right to a public education while following the guidelines? I'm sure you have all made your decisions already, as history has shown, but sit back and really think about the damage you are doing to the children of Melrose, damage that will be seen for years and years to come. You were elected to represent the needs of the children and the families of Melrose, not the teachers' union. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Thomas. Are there any other members of the public who would like to speak during public comment? We don't have any remote participants at this time.
We have someone who's reached out to us via text, but doesn't have access to the school committee link. I don't know how else to handle this. Should we call that person?
Well, let's let the folks who are here go ahead, please. Just sign in and identify yourself and go ahead for 3 minutes.
Good
Thank
evening.
you.
My name is Lynn Kelly. I live at 18 Tremont Street here in Melrose. Lifelong Melrose resident, parent of 3 boys, 2 out of the school system, 1 currently still in. Unlike my friend Michelle, I have not prepared anything, but after a lot of discussion and a lot of thought, really compelled me to come here this evening. We have been through, without a doubt, 14 months of absolute unmitigated misery because of this pandemic. Our children have followed the rules, they've stayed home, they've logged on, they've worn masks, they're now in summer school, they're doing this, they're doing that. The one comment that resonates with me is when my son says, "I really don't have a choice." I mean, that broke my heart. You know, I mean, we're sitting here, these kids are back out in the public, they're back with their friends, they're back with their family. They are packing your groceries at Shaw's, they are clearing your tables at Giacomo's and Mexico Lindo, and they're doing so unmasked. I'm sitting here and I kind of find it a little bit hypocritical that you're going to require that our kids are wearing masks in school 8 hours a day, yet here you all are not wearing one. I mean, so is it kind of just like, well, you're just going to do what we're going to say and that's it? This has been a very, very trying year on personal levels, emotional levels. Our kids are suffering like you have no idea. Resources were, in my opinion, wasted with that drive-through testing that my son missed a total of 3 weeks of school away from school property because his off week at home and then the 1 week of testing where thousands of people were tested and 7 came back positive. I follow the CDC every single day looking at people who have passed and who have passed through a variety of reasons, whether it be COVID, COVID with pneumonia, COVID with cancer, COVID with this, COVID with that. Please don't do that to our kids this year. Stop fear-mongering and please let these kids go back to being kids. Having watched a lot of the Zoom classes and participated, you know, albeit from another room when my kids were in school, you know, to see the teacher, I felt like I was walking out of a bad sci-fi movie, to see a teacher sitting there by herself in a classroom with a mask on, a face shield, plexiglass. I mean, I felt like John Travolta's movie was reincarnated that we were watching. I'm asking you, please, don't follow lockstep with what people are saying. Every day, the science is changing. Nope, you need the vaccine. Now you need a booster. Now you need 2 boosters. Don't take it if you have heart issues. Well, my son has a heart murmur. Do I give him to that and then watch him be hooked up, you know, in the ER because he's having, you know, cardiac arrhythmia or something like that? Because we don't know. You know, my own doctor has advised me against taking the vaccine because I have a blood condition that makes me prone to blood clots. Every day, the science is changing. What I do think is that, you know, please do what's best for the kids. If I could give a Medal of the Year award to one person here in Melrose, who, in my opinion, basically carried my son through this year of the pandemic, it would have to be Chelsea Davidson. You know, for one who never gave up on my son, who never gave up on my child, who in my opinion is the epitome of a hero because you know what? She offered things like a smile, an encouraging word, an email every day when he would come into access into school because over the 14 months during this pandemic, he was depressed. He's still depressed. You know, I mean, it has wreaked total havoc and what really, really, really grates my gears as an employee in the hospitality industry is that I hear that you're all passing, well, this is what our kids are going to do, and this, that, and the other thing. And then I turn around on a Friday night and I see the same group of people sitting in my restaurant, no mask, enjoying martinis and steaks for hours on end and everything. So it's kind of like that do as I say, not as I do mentality. I am imploring you, please do not do this to our kids. okay? I'm tired of the catchphrases. I'm tired of, we're all weathering the same storm, but it's a different boat. Okay, you know what? Want to hear about my boat? You know, my boat is like the door from the Titanic, and I'm Rose gripping onto it. And I don't want to let these kids go. But you have to understand the long-term effects. And throwing a mural up on the side of Melrose High School is not going to fix the situation. Let these kids come back and be kids. Let them come back and see their friends in the hallway. Let them come back and smile, high five, be able to, walk the halls where they're not, Orwellian single file and people sitting outside the bath, things like that. Let them just be kids. My son has 2 years left in the Melrose Public School system. I don't want him to continue going into this upcoming academic school year with the same look on his face as he digs through the house. Personally, my masks are probably in a landfill in New Jersey. I threw them out. I'm done. I did my part and everything else. But, please, having him get out that door every day to walk to school, looking through his pocket, looking for that mask, it's, as a parent, it breaks your heart, and my heart has been broken over the past 14 months. You have robbed these kids of their spirit. It's sometimes in part due to a collective bargaining agreement by the teachers union. I hear it, I see it, Parents don't want their kids to be masked, okay? So I thank you for your time. I'm sorry to have been a little bit of a run-on, but sometimes, I can't prepare what I need to say, I just have to say it from the heart. And I truly, truly do appreciate everyone here taking the time to do what they think is the best for our kids. Let the parents decide what we think is best for our kids. Because I don't know about you, but the 10 months that I carried mine and 12 hours of labor and sleepless nights and diseases and broken bones and this, that, and the other thing, I know he doesn't need to wear a mask going to school. So I want to thank you very much.
Thank you very much for that comment. Are there any other members of the public in person? Seeing none. I'll just remind everyone that our policy on the remote is that folks, as our agenda says, are to email me by 5:30 p.m. on the day of the meeting to get the link so that we can make sure that we get everyone who wants to speak remotely on. So if that person who's texting you, I'm not comfortable going away from the policy because they're deciding mid-meeting that they want to comment. So we'll make sure that we continue to get that message out to everyone of how to participate. Seeing no other members of the public and without objection, public comment is now closed. Thank you all. Next is the announcements of the Superintendent of Schools. Dr. Kuchenberger?
Yes, so I have 2 announcements that are listed on the agenda and then 2 additional announcements that I'd like to add. So first, just talking about fall reopening. The first thing I will say is that our priority, much like the commissioners, is to ensure that students are in school every day, 5 days a week, all day. And we're prepared to do whatever it takes to make sure that that can happen for all of our students. We have not made any decisions about safety protocols yet. We're still awaiting guidance. We are following every day the changes that are happening with the Delta variant and watching that very closely, locally looking at our numbers. And as I did all throughout this school year, we'll be working alongside our health director to make informed evidence-based decisions as we go. My apologies. So at this time, the few things that I can say is that we've been in school since June 28th. Our last day of school was June 18th, but our ESY programs kicked off on June 28th. We have required our students to wear masks when they are indoor, but they are unmasked and able to take mask breaks at various points in the day, particularly when they're playing outside. And teachers are taking advantage of the outdoors and they're outside as much as possible. We do still have tents on all of our campuses. The community is using them in some ways, and we're also utilizing them on some of the super hot days. It's trickier to be outside as much as we would like, but that has proven to be continuing to be a successful strategy for us. We've had just one positive COVID case so far this summer in our ESY programs, and a number of students and staff were identified as close contacts under the current guidelines. That means that we notify them, we let them know, but they're not required to quarantine as they were with some of the previous iterations. And I'm happy to report that we had no additional cases as a result of those close contacts. So further evidence that our multi-pronged risk mitigation approach is effective. As we think about fall 2021, the leadership team and myself are thinking a lot about the best way to help our students, to meet our students where they are, and to help them to accelerate their learning. Today, we spent a full day from 8 to 3 looking at our data and really leaning into the diagnostic and planning phases, asking ourselves what information do we have about our students from 2020, 2021, and previous years, and how do we need to iterate and adjust to make sure that we're providing grade level appropriate content and resources to each and every student. And what that requires us to do is really focus on 4 things. So our primary focus is on equity first and foremost, making sure that we're constantly asking ourselves who are we serving well and who we could be serving better as we develop our reopening plans for the fall. We're also looking at we know relationships are important. That's always been important to us here in Melrose and to the leadership team prior to my arrival. But this year, we're really focusing on that with much more intent and thinking about how do we help every student and staff member create a sense of belonging. We're thinking really intently about the relationships that we have with one another, the relationships that our students have with our staff and with each other, and the partnerships that we can create with our parents. And we'll talk a bit about that in our strategy overview update as well. The third thing that we're focusing on is progress monitoring. So what is that? What are the different formative assessment processes that will be in place in addition to our pre and post and summative assessments, so we can constantly ask ourselves those 2 questions: who are we serving well and who could we be serving better? And so our goal isn't to remediate. We know that even though that sometimes feels intuitive, many people have said, we want a do-over year or we want another year of public school, adding like a 13th grade. The evidence that's emerging is really clear that that is not, in fact, how we're going to help our students get on track or stay on track. It's really that acceleration of learning. And then the 4th aspect is that just-in-time scaffolds. So when we're presenting students with that grade level appropriate content, we're utilizing the strong instructional practices that we've developed in Melrose, and we're enhancing to make sure that we're lifting students up and they're able to meet with success. So we'll be talking more about that throughout the summer. You'll see that in my newsletter that will come out in mid-August, where we'll give families a chance to engage with those priorities a little bit more, and also plan to provide some more clarity around what are the health and safety protocols that will be in place. I did check in with the department today just to see if we had an estimated timeline for when those guidelines might come out from the department, and we don't just yet. But I do know that pooled testing is still going to be available. That's something that we plan to continue to participate in, if possible, as just, again, another risk mitigation strategy. And also asking families and staff if they're willing to share with us whether they've been vaccinated or not, just to kind of get a sense of, what do the numbers look like in our community. And so we'll work to utilize all the resources that we have to make that as streamlined of a process as possible for families who either want to participate in pooled testing or, who want to participate in pooled testing and or share that information with us about their vaccination status. But at this time, we're really just waiting. We don't have clarity yet. We're 3 weeks after the 4th of July, and much like we've seen all throughout the pandemic, numbers are increasing. The thing that has changed is the prevalence of the new variant, the Delta variant. And what we know and are learning about that is that it's much more transmissible. Viral loads are higher from date of exposure in a shorter period of time. So that does pose a greater risk than the previous variants that we had been navigating all throughout last year. So the update really is just that we are waiting, we are learning, we are constantly following the evidence and processing that as we receive it.
Thank you. Should we take questions as we go, or you want to take questions at the end of your whole update?
Why don't we do it at the end?
Okay, great.
So up next, thinking about the middle school social emotional programs, I'm so proud to just re-announce that we have hired a new visual performing arts director who comes to us with a unique skill set. He's very versed and experienced as an assistant principal, but versed in PBIS, which is our positive behavior intervention support system that we implement across the district, and also comes with a strong social emotional background. So we have hired Stephen Black as point 6, visual performing arts director, and point 4, secondary social emotional specialist. So his immediate task will be to support the high school and middle school in implementing team time and crew, and also looking at some of that data to help us make some plans for how to best address the social emotional needs of our oldest students. We do have a similar position at the elementary level. It's a full-time 1.0 social emotional specialist, but we have not had a comparable position at the secondary level. We also received a preliminary report from the SEAM consultant who came in and did the needs assessment of the access program at the middle school. So we've scheduled some time this week for myself, the principal, and our assistant superintendent of pupil personnel services to analyze that report and come up with next steps. And we'll certainly be bringing that to you at a future meeting. So we continue to look at our YRBS data. We've already had one round of analysis as a whole team, and we're digging in deeper to really look at not just the middle school, but all grades, and really understanding what are our students telling us about where they are and what they need in the upcoming school year, and trying to maximize the potential of all of our resources in order to best meet them where they are. The other two updates are about recruitment and retention and hardship appeals. So we have been very busy, which I'm learning is the norm here in Melrose. Seems like every time we recruit and hire a really awesome candidate, someone else moves on to another opportunity. So it's been very busy. I've had the fortune to meet with all of the certified staff that we've onboarded. You do have a personnel report later in your packet, but I wanted to just let you know that that is an ongoing, evolving process, and we are working really strategically as a leadership team to check ourselves for biases in the hiring process, from as soon as screening applicants to interviewing them and making final decisions. We've really been opening up the process, particularly when we're hiring administrators, to create candidate forums. So what I enjoy about that as superintendent and where I find value is it allows me to be able to see candidates interacting with different stakeholders, with students in some cases, depending on the position, with staff, with leadership, and with parents. And then we collect feedback from folks, and we use that feedback to make a decision around what's the best fit for our community, not just for that position or that school at this one time. And I believe this is going to be a strategy that leads to us being able to better support candidates once they are hired and onboarded, because more people will be a part of the process, and the hope is that will lead to more retention for longer periods of time. And then the final update is just hardship appeals. The analysis of those are underway. I meet with Brittany Ferguson, who is our student and staff support specialist. She also is the face that greets you when you come into central office. We are continually looking at enrollment, and much like staff in, staff out, we have students in, students out. And so whenever we're able to, we make regular appointments to reassess the enrollment data, and when we're able to honor hardship appeals, of course we want to do that. The challenge that we have is balancing classes. For example, right now across the city, most of our second grade classes are at 22, 23, with the exception of Lincoln, their classes are at 18. And so we want to make sure that we're not overloading any one school or any one grade, and then having classes that are too small in other schools. So I would just ask families to be patient with the process, and I know that folks are eager to be thinking forward and be making plans for next year, but if we weren't able to honor a hardship appeal at this time, it doesn't mean that we're done for the summer. We'll look at it again, not next week, but the week after, and there will be more communication. Whenever we're able to make a move happen, we try to communicate that right away. So I just want to thank the families for their patience in that process. We've also, just along those lines, been meeting with some families who are hoping to either skip a grade Or we have some families who would like to retain their students in a grade, and we have processes in place for that as well. We meet with families and do assessments to make those determinations. And that concludes my update for tonight.
Thank you, Superintendent. Are there any questions for the superintendent at this time? Mr. Obremski.
Thank you for the update on the hardship cases, because I know we're all getting emails back and forth on that topic. And then I had a question on, so when you were looking at the data from last year, we're still going to assess in the fall, like Dibbles assess K to 5 in the fall, correct? Yeah.
Yep, absolutely. We have Dr. Adams and her team of folks have established assessment calendars at all grade levels, and that's part of what we're looking at, is not just when are we going to assess, but when are we then going to analyze the data in order to inform our instruction and our decisions.
Right. And then on the topic of the retention of staff that was mentioned, and I don't know any district that does this, but is there the opportunity for a person who's leaving the district to have an exit interview and maybe find the reason why because part of the override was the sell that we would be better able to retain staff. And, people have 10,000 reasons why they leave. Like they move, their spouse gets another job, more money. But I don't know if the opportunity presents itself to do some type of exit interview and maybe figure out why people are leaving.
Yeah, so what we do currently is anytime a person resigns, we include a paper exit interview with that letter acknowledging their resignation. Most of the time we know why they've resigned. They usually write a very thanking for us for the support and their years of service and explaining, what is the personal situation that's resulting in the change. If they're in the short time that I've been here, there have been a couple where I'm like, I really wonder what's going on with that, and I've just asked to meet with folks, and so I have had some one-on-one conversations when the situation warranted it, but we do ask everyone for feedback.
All right, great, thank you.
Yep.
Thank you. Ms. Razzie Thomas.
A quick question about masking. I'm curious about whether there would be any differentiation between the upper classes and the lower classes, students who can be vaccinated versus there's no eligibility for younger students under age 12, right? So how, hypothetically, is there any possible way of making, if we had to go to masking, could we do masking for lower schools, but not upper schools?
Yeah, I thought I would be done with this phrase, but I think, again, the answer is it depends, right? So obviously, we know that our youngest students cannot be vaccinated. I think the nuance here that we all have to keep in mind is that school is required and mandated. So students don't have a choice if they're going to come to school or not. They don't get to decide how long they're there. They don't get to decide where even they go necessarily throughout the day or who they sit next to. And so short of us knowing who is and isn't vaccinated, which is not something that's mandated at this time, it's hard to say, right?
Yep.
The other thing is, we know that when we have all of our students back in person, we can't maintain physical distance. That was another risk mitigating factor that allowed for more mask breaks and eating lunch in the classrooms and things like that. As we bring all of our students back, that's just not realistic. It's not possible, actually, in most of our buildings. So those are some of the things that we have to keep in place. It's not like when you're moving about the world in your personal life and you can decide to go to that public place or that concert or the grocery store and wear a mask or not, or leave if you feel like it's not a safe space for you. So our job, first and foremost, is to create the safest and healthiest environment possible. Doesn't matter how awesome our curriculum is or how amazing our teachers are if children aren't healthy and if we're not keeping them safe. So that's why you often see more restrictions in public places, particularly when attendance is mandated.
Thank you very much.
Sure.
Mr. O'Connell, please.
Thanks very much, through the chair to the superintendent. So, to be clear, we have not yet made a decision with regard to masks.
We have not made any decisions regarding any of our health and safety protocols for the fall.
Thank you. And is it also my understanding correct that the Centers for Disease Control have recommended that students in K to 12 be masked?
That's what I saw today. I haven't read the report in its entirety because we were together all day with leadership. But one of the headlines I saw, it was recommending it for K-12, public schools. Another headline I saw, it said if you're in high-risk, high transmission spaces. So I think more information will be coming very soon. And really, we have to watch and see. Unfortunately, as we've all experienced for the past year and a half, this is an ever-changing situation.
And the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education hasn't issued any directives in this regard?
Not at this time. The last directive was prior to the start of summer school, where it said that masks were required but not, were recommended but not required.
Very good. And on a separate point, if I may, Madam Chair, clearly the Access Program has been the subject of community discussion, and I know it's something that I and my colleagues are interested in, to say the least. Also something that's clearly within your authority in terms of an administrative matter. All of that said, do you expect to be reporting back to us on it again at our next meeting? Is that the plan going forward?
Absolutely, 100%.
Terrific. Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you. Mayor Broder?
Am I allowed to ask a question here?
No, sorry, only during public comment. Thank you, though.
But even though if I'm being lied to?
We take,
I mean, I just,
we take comments from the public during public comment, or you can send us an email. Thank you.
not allowed to ask a question like everyone else in the school committee has?
No, you're not. Thank you. Mayor Broder?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Normally, I would hold this to the end, but it is directly relevant to what we're talking about. As you all know, the summer stroll is coming up this Friday from 6 to 9 p.m., and with the cooperation of the Baker administration and Secretary Sutters, we have arranged to have a mobile vax site stand up. Details to come, but I can tell you this, it will be from 5 to 7 on Friday. It will be in the vicinity of City Hall. We're going to try to find the most easy access, visible place to do it. It will be no appointment necessary. It'll be 100% walk-in, and it will be available for folks 12 and up. And again, we will push out some more details on that, but that is the gist of it. It is certainly, as most folks will agree, it is the most important mitigation strategy for controlling the spread of the virus, and so we are happy to be able to make it available this Friday. And folks should also know it is not exclusively for Melrose folks, so if there is someone that you know that might be interested in availing himself of this option, we are welcome to have them come by and get the shot.
Great. Excellent. Great news. Thank you. Any other questions or comments from the superintendent? I just have a couple to add. Could you comment at this time, or is it still too soon to comment on the schedule? I know we've had a lot of questions about just going back to the regular length time blocks at the high school versus the extended blocks, and also about the school day times. Is that still being decided or in the works?
Sure. So our plan is to go back to the traditional start and end school day schedule. So it'll be a full day for everyone. And the high school has transitioned away from the 90-minute blocks, 90-plus minute blocks, to a more traditional period. One difference in the secondary schedule is rather than being a 7-day rotation, it'll be a 5-day rotation. So Monday will always be Monday, Tuesday will always be Tuesday. So our hope is that will help students plan better.
50 years of history right down the toilet. Knowing where and when you're supposed to be somewhere.
Waterfall? No more waterfall?
My apologies.
So that is one change that we're all excited about, but everything right now is going to look much more traditional in terms of the schedule and the school day.
Thank you very much. Excellent. Okay, moving on. Next up is our consent agenda, which tonight includes the following items: the school committee regular meeting minutes of June 22nd, the concussion report, the personnel report, the monthly budget summary, and the warrants as follows. Fiscal 21 wire transfer in the amount of $11,755.91. Fiscal 21 School 1 warrant S22002 in the amount of $5,899, and fiscal 21 School warrant 2 S22003 in the amount of $439,022.34, and fiscal 21 School 3 athletics refunds in the amount of $4,996.98. Are there any items that would like to be removed from the consent agenda, Ms. Driscoll?
The meeting minutes of June 22nd, please.
Meeting minutes of June 22nd will go to announcements of the chair. Thank you. Any others? Seeing none, is there a motion to approve the balance of the consent agenda made by Mr. O'Connell, seconded by Ms. Razzie Thomas? All in favor? Opposed? None. That carries unanimously with one absent. Thank you all. Next up is the work of our subcommittees, and we start with policy and planning. Ms. Razzie Thomas will be chairing for Ms. DeSalm. Thank you. Sorry, I have to unplug and extricate myself from here. Yes.
Watch out for all the wires. Thank you. Good evening. Welcome to Policy and Planning. Ms. DeSalm is under the weather tonight and was being cautious, decided not to come, so we wish her well. We're going to start with the update on our strategy overview, our annual big brain dump. And just to accent the importance of this, the elements are supporting you. So now for your big boom, you can go ahead through the superintendent, I'm sure.
I think you were starting off.
Yes. Thank you so much. I'm excited tonight to be joined by several of our colleagues who will introduce themselves in just a moment. Tonight, we're presenting to you our reflection of the first year of progress toward our strategy overview. We have been working so hard this year amidst everything else, or in spite of everything else, I should say, to continue our eye on our strategy and to make sure that everything that we are doing is connected toward our work of realizing our mission and our vision. And this strategy has been an essential guide. So starting back in March, we as a full leadership team, which includes all of the principals, the assistant principals, our directors, our assistant superintendents, our special ed coordinators, have come together and taken really objective by objective and thought really deeply about what is the work that we have accomplished, what has not yet been started, and what's in progress. And so today my colleagues are going to report on that. And one of the things that we're really excited to do as we reflect and plan, it's like this constant cycle, is to really make clear the connections between all of our work. So the PBIS work that's been ongoing in the district for a number of years, which is that positive behavior intervention support system, the social emotional work and that has been done, the universal design for learning, all connected, and you see here on this image, centered around equity so that we can ensure that we are educating the entire child, we are meeting their physical, their mental, their social, and emotional well-being needs. So with that, I'll allow my colleagues to go ahead and introduce themselves. They'll also share their titles for those who are joining us maybe for the first time or haven't met these folks yet. Dr. Adams?
Good evening, everyone. I'm Jason Merrill. I'm the principal at Melrose High School.
Margaret Adams, Assistant Superintendent for Teaching and Learning.
Hi, I'm Patty White-Lambright. I'm the Assistant Superintendent for Pupil Personnel Services.
Melanie Acevedo, Director of Personalized Learning and Instructional Technology.
So in the packet, you received a longer document that had a lot of detail with narrative on the progress of this year towards the priorities and goals and objectives. We decided, as we have in the past, to sort of do some highlights, things that we're very proud of, and also tried to provide some examples. Those are just examples. They're not all of the work that was done, that there's greater detail in the document, but we just wanted to highlight some of the pieces that we're very proud of and share a little bit of the work of the district. You also received a revision of the strategy overview, and you'll notice as we go through that we're really trying to, as in this visual, really highlight the work the district is trying to do around cultural responsive teaching practices and equity, where equity is at the center, is kind of like the table of our work, and we're inviting other members of our work, PBIS and SEL, personalized learning, are all centered around this common theme about providing equitable learning environments.
So I'm going to share about Goal 1, which is plan for student-centered, personalized, and self-directed learning through high-quality curriculum and varied systems of assessment. And a couple of the highlights that we're really proud of this year, despite the pandemic, the personalized learning cohort continued to meet once or twice a month, depending on the month. And we provided PD on the March 10th Professional Development Day for all of our colleagues. We were able to administer a self-assessment for a baseline of data for us to be able to look at from all teachers pre-K through 12. We really focused as a cohort this year on how do we get student conferences kind of up and running, and how do we use portfolios as the vehicle that we're going to do that with. So we're asking our students to make portfolios, but there isn't really a purpose as to why. Student-led conferences are really where that why comes in. So the cohort worked on creating some plans and a timeline that we hope to share with our colleagues that are going to help other teachers with that process. Another highlight was we did some significant curriculum development and curriculum work. The arts department continued to work on their portfolios with goal setting, especially as we went remote and having students learn instruments and those kinds of things. The wellness department is working on aligning their Michigan model, their new curriculum, into curriculum units. And there was a significant overhaul of social studies, K through 12, particularly in K to 5, which you'll see in a slide in a couple of minutes. So some of the examples of work that we have this summer at Lincoln, we have about 200 students that are part of the Summer Learning Academy. Every student from rising first graders through rising sixth graders have set goals for themselves and learned about how they learn best in order to provide some practice with some PLPs. On the left, you'll see an example from reader's response. So a fifth grade student, rising fifth grade student, looks at their reader's response, determines where are their stars, so what are they doing well, where are their wishes, what do they need to practice, they set a goal and then an action plan. On the right, you can see that we took this offline and brought it back to paper for our rising second graders. They determined kind of what their best learning environment was, and they drew a picture and wrote a sentence, and then they determined a goal for the summer, either reading, writing, or math. This friend said, I want to read a lot so I can grow up to be a librarian. That was her goal for the summer. These are some playlists. Playlists are ways that we can provide learning experiences for students that offer some voice and choice and allow students to find an entry point that works for them. And then work towards a common goal. So the teacher might say, here's the objective we're all working on, but these are the ways that we can get there. So on the left, you see something from the Spanish department of a way that they were using some playlists, and on the right, you see a math menu for a math extension from fourth grade. As I said earlier, there was significant revisions in the social studies curriculum. These are some examples from K to 5. We went back to using an inquiry focus so that we're really digging into content and digging into ideas rather than memorizing dates and those kinds of things. So we use an inquiry design measure, or an IDM, where students are really discovering information as they work through the unit and trying to answer some essential questions as they go. And these are some of the resources that we've created for teachers. So some of our next steps, we're hoping to implement a third year of the personalized learning cohort. We have people that still want to stay with us, which is really exciting. We want to re-administer the self-assessment again towards the end of fall of 2021, now that we're hoping to return back, full-time, full instruction and see what those results are compared to our spring 2021 data. We're continuing to work on updating curriculum maps. We're looking at ways that we can use the habits of learning more strategically. That's really a goal that we want to think about, particularly in the high school, but really it is a K-12 focus of how we use those habits of learning. Continue working on our digital portfolios, hoping to have spring student-led conferences, and then also to continue the professional development we provide for UDL and personalized learning to help enhance educator understanding.
Everyone, I'm going to talk about Goal 2, which reads, design and respond to learner variability and interest by employing culturally responsive, personalized, and inclusive instructional practices. And some of the highlights certainly is going to be the district's achievement of going one-to-one with devices with Chromebooks this year, and leading to a lot of great opportunities for students, and we look forward to that rollout in August. You're going to see a continued focus of resources on social emotional learning and UDL. As Mel also said, the year 2 of the personalized learning cohort has been a really integral part of moving forward personalized learning in Melrose. The curation of some best practices also led to the implementation of some changes in our first and second year teacher preparation programs. And then we've seen a lot more examples of digital portfolios, which includes goal setting and reflection for students, and we've seen that across all grade levels. Here you see 2 examples, one from the elementary at the bottom and one from the middle school at the top, of tiered systems of supports. And we have a group of educators working throughout the summer at all grade levels to continue some of this work, with the focus really being around strengthening our Tier 2 and Tier 3 supports. And this work is really centered around social emotional learning and inclusivity for our students. The next few slides, you're going to see some great examples of where we see some variability in students and some personalization and some voice and choice for our students. You heard earlier in the school year, the school committee heard a presentation from some of the 10th grade ELA teachers at the high school on the revamping of the 10th grade ELA curriculum and their capstone project, which was the ISMS project, where they really dove into an essential question that they developed themselves and something that they were passionate about and really wanted to dig into and learn more about, and presented to some of their peers. And that was really a highlight, certainly for the high school. And these are some of some screenshots of examples of that work. Here you're going to see, in a similar fashion, some screenshots of the Civics Project, which rolled out at the 8th grade this year. We also had it, a section of this as an elective at the high school, and it will roll out in the 11th grade, as you know, this coming school year. But here's some great examples, again, where students are able to, find some passion and have some voice and choice in what they kind of research, and as well as what their final product is. And it's really interesting just curating some of this to be able to see what some of the 8th graders were doing. So it's exciting for us at the high school to see that. And then on this slide, you'll see a couple examples of similar projects called the Passion Projects that were done. These are examples at the 3rd and 5th grade, where students are doing similar work in the elementary schools around some of the same topics, like building essential questions and what their driving question is as they start to research and present. So some next steps for us is to continue to identify professional development opportunities and continue, we talked about today, developing this common language throughout everything we do, and everything is coming back to social emotional learning. The implementation of CREW at the high school, which you'll hear a little bit more about as we go on the presentation. And as I said, the clarity and role of those Tier 2 and Tier 3 interventions is where the focus is in our supports the summer. And I think student-led conferences is certainly something that's been highlighted. I know the middle school's had a lot of success with that. So we're also trying to focus to determine like what the appropriate use is, and that it doesn't necessarily take away the parent-teacher conference that folks have become used to, but how do we continue to have students advocate for themselves and have a voice in their school day? Thank you.
So as we've talked about teaching all of our students, the next goal we want to look at is a responsive and inclusive environment. So goal 3 is for us to design a safe, supportive, and student-centered schools in which all students, staff, and members of the community can thrive. And you'll see and hear the same words throughout each of our goals because these are common threads that we want to hold our overview together with. So again, we want to highlight the use of our community circles in pre-K through 5, our flex blocks at the middle school and the high school. We're very happy about the creation of social emotional lessons across the entire district, pre-K through 12. And that really supports and is in conjunction with all the continued work we've done around PBIS. Certainly one of the positives from our need to be virtual has been the ability for families to participate more regularly in different types of meetings. So, we do want to hold on to some of those positive experiences as well. It's created more access. In addition, we continue to do our work around equity in our PD offerings and our use of specific tools to access and assess our bias in our curriculum. And across the entire district, a variety of teams continue to meet regularly to think about their students and implement systems of support for them throughout the entire school year. And these are just some examples of professional development that we've jumped into. As you can imagine, a lot of the staff are readers, so our book clubs are really a popular option for people. So there's just so many opportunities for staff to be involved. These are just some examples of different materials that we were created in activities to support diversity across the district. Oh, can you go back to that one for a second? Sorry, I just wanted to mention the flag. So in the corner there, this is, I think we said it was at the Lincoln School. Yes. Students in the foyer having a conversation about what do they see about the flag. And really this was, again, all of the PTOs put together and made sure all of our schools had flags to display in our buildings. I just thought that was a wonderful example. And then Jason, you can talk a little bit more about crew.
Sure, thank you. So I'll just talk briefly for a minute, and then some of our students and parents are going to be hearing a lot more about this. We built a block into our schedule this year called Crew, and it's going to meet Monday mornings. And it's our social emotional learning home base for the week. And it's going to be, each crew is built with a small community of students, all in the same grade with a teacher. There'll be about 12 students in each crew, and they'll stay together in loop for all 4 years in high school to kind of model building that relationship with a new group of folks that have something alike in the community, and that's their grade. And this is a place where we can hold important discussions, share information. They'll be supported by the guidance counselor in crews as well to kind of start to plan out the college and career readiness aspect of high school. It's a place to monitor academics as well as social emotional well-being, to goal set, reflect, plan for the week, identify needs. And we're really excited about the potential and opportunity and have some fun things planned as well that are going to revolve around crew. 2 weeks ago, we had about 13 of us, high school educators, met to start to to frame out the year's calendar for those 34 or so crew blocks that are going to meet throughout the year, and really started to specifically plan what some of those lessons are going to look like in the fall. So we're building those now, and really, really excited about this opportunity. Thank you.
And so our next steps, we are excited to continue our work around community circles, around PBIS, our continued professional development around equity. Beginning our crew blocks at the high school will be very exciting. And look to continue to provide virtual options for parents to participate in meetings. So, you're next. All right, that's it.
Goal 4 focuses on the development of professional learning communities to support ongoing collaboration among educators to support teaching and learning. One of the highlights, we've talked about the access that virtual meetings provided. You may not know that our ELL teachers in the elementary met all year long, every 2 weeks on Thursday evenings with their families. And they became a way, all began with a fun sort of activity. It was like, one night it was like, name that tune with 9-year-olds. But afterwards, and families, and then afterwards, there were an opportunity to sort of highlight upcoming dates and changes, as well as answer families' questions. So it was a way to provide families access and build community in a time when families were getting, and specifically this population, getting lots of information, and at times needing access to just an opportunity to ask a question of their educators and of us. So it was a way to provide access, and we're hopeful that it's something that we can continue next year with different groups who traditionally have not been as engaged in meetings because of childcare or transportation. We've talked a lot about personalized learning and the work that was done this year, and we want to continue to leverage that going into next year. And PBIS as well. I just want to highlight too, it hasn't been mentioned tonight, about the work of the Diversity and Equity and Inclusion Task Force. Ms. Razzie Thomas sits on the group, and it's started its work to start to formulate, and I think we gained momentum in the spring, and then summer came along. And so we're looking forward to continuing to use that group to sort of help develop a path forward for the district around equity. We've also been very thoughtful about new teachers and entering of new teachers into the district, and trying to continually, thanks to Ms. Acevedo, Ms. Patty, and some other educators, revising the curriculum so that the message that our new teachers, when I started new teacher programs 9 years ago, when I came to Melrose, is much different. It's very focused on our goals around personalized learning and equity, so that the staff are receiving, new teachers are receiving some of the the most recent professional development that our teachers have been engaged in, and as well understanding the mission and vision of the district. And so here's an example. On the right is what we often call a learning progression. So what we're trying to do is model for new teachers what we want them to do as students. Let's be really clear on what our objectives are for students and what we want them to learn. And let's engage our students in monitoring their own progress towards these objectives, sharing their own artifacts and their own data towards these objectives. Today, with the leadership team, we've also gave them a learning progression, trying to model what this process would look like for us as adults, so that teachers can then say, oh, I get it. I can do this with my students as well. And we know that this particular instructional practice has high impact on achievement. On the left side is an example of some directions for teachers to create their own portfolio, just like we're modeling for them what we want them to do with their students. And in the bottom left, there's an example of some goals from a teacher, again, modeling that goal-setting process so that you're taking ownership of your own professional development, your own learning, same that we want to do for our students in the classroom. We've talked a lot about the district PBIS team. There was an enormous amount of material that was created this year and shared across the district to support social emotional learning. And that was done in collaboration, teachers working together, sharing materials, curating materials. In the right-hand bottom is an example of a check-in, check-out, which we would consider kind of a tier 2 intervention for a student who needs a little bit more support in building relationships and in social emotional learning skills, and that is a tool that we want to continue to share. And in the bottom left is the example of our MTSS triangle for social emotional learning, really trying to highlight what are our tiered interventions that support the social emotional learning needs of our students. For next steps, there was a tremendous amount of professional collaboration that happened this year as teachers worked together to create materials for the various learning models and changes throughout the year. We want to really leverage those professional learning communities into next year. Professional learning communities also came together around equity, around personalized learning, and so we want to leverage that and continue to support and really continue to develop teacher leaders who can lead the work in the district and continue to build capacity of those leaders. We also want to, and on this Thursday, the leadership team is going over to the Lincoln to do a walkthrough, and we want to really bring back learning walkthroughs with a real focus on equity, really and so that the leadership team is walking the building with other school leaders, with teachers as well, to really get a sense and really analyze our learning environments and our teaching practices in a way we didn't do this past year for various reasons. So we want to get back to that, and we really want to hone it and focus it on culturally responsive practices and on equity. And we want to continue to build our capacity to use equity tools as we reflect around unit creation, around curriculum and material selection, really hone in on that equity piece.
So just in conclusion, I mentioned this a little bit in my update as I talked about fall reopening, but this really is the heart of our work as we are entering this first phase of the planning process, which is diagnostic and planning. So we're looking at how do we keep equity at the forefront of each and every decision that we're making? How do we take pauses throughout our work when we're in meetings, when we're analyzing data, when we're doing walkthroughs to really assess, who we're serving well and who we could be serving better. And then the additional priorities of fostering that sense of belonging and partnership among students and families. We've made huge technological gains this year. We know we need to bring our families along. Some of the successes we've had in virtual meetings were some sort of how-to sessions that I know Ms. Acevedo led a few, Jess Patty led a few around just SEL supports at home, and Mr. Corrigan, our assistant principal at the high school, met with METCO families and helped them let's walk through how to log into Aspen, how to help support your student. Let's look at Google Classroom. So we know we need to do more of that to really foster and enhance that partnership, not only with our students, but also with our families. We talked about the continuous model or monitoring for students' understanding. We have to inspect what we expect as we go along the way so that we can adjust, and then making sure that all students have access to grade level appropriate instruction with just-in-time scaffolds when they are needed. So that means we're not going to redo last year. We're not going to put materials in front of students or curriculum in front of students that isn't age appropriate, because we know that can be really detrimental to their progress. And in fact, when we think about remediation as an intervention, the evidence is really clear that can be actually harmful, particularly to some of our more traditionally marginalized populations. So the name of the game is acceleration, putting grade level content in front of kids and the adults around them adjusting and providing those scaffolded supports. So we're thinking about this across 4 phases. I mentioned phase 1, which is all the work that's happening before school starts. That's the diagnostic and planning phase. And then we'll get to implementation, launching our COVID recovery plan. And this looks like that it starts and stops, but it's really a simultaneous process that happens, and we're making lots of time in our schedule, being really intentional about not only collecting data, because we're really good at that, but analyzing that data and using it to drive our decision-making on individual student levels, whole class levels, course levels, school levels. And then, of course, that reflection and planning process, much like you saw us doing here, that these phases here outlined in the DESE Acceleration Roadmap really align to the process we followed this year and in the years past. So making sure that we're just on pace and thinking through those 4 lenses, those 4 priorities throughout the year is what's really going to help ensure success for all students. And we are so committed. When we say all learners, we truly, truly mean all learners. And so that's our work. That's what we've been doing. This is get a little window into what we're up to. We have 3 intensive days as a leadership team. We're spending all day from 8 to 3 together, really laying the foundation of this work so that when we welcome our staff back formally, many have been learning and working all summer long through our summer programs and professional development. But we start new teacher orientation the week of August 23rd. We have some other targeted dates that folks will be attending. And then the first day for staff is August 30th. It's right around the corner. And the first day for students is September 1st. We're happy to answer any questions that you all may have about our work.
Thank you very much for the whole team and for you, Dr. Kay. Mr. O'Connell.
Thank you, Madam Chair. First of all, thank you all for the great work. I'm sitting here struck by the fact that it's July 27th, and we often have in our heads that the school year ends in June, and we all go away, but clearly the work doesn't end for any of you, so thank you for the work and for being here with us tonight. Also, excellent progress, really remarkable progress despite the challenges we had over the past year. One of the questions I had, having read the packet, was with regard to teacher buy-in, faculty and staff buy-in with regard to these efforts. You spoke to it. Thank you for that. And clearly, we're getting the buy-in we need. I hope it sounds like you feel like we're getting the buy-in we need from faculty and staff. I also want to thank you for making the strategy overview accessible, approachable, and quite frankly, understandable. As a school committee member, this has been one of my biggest challenges for as long as I've been here. And it was a running joke, at least I think it was a joke, between me and the prior superintendent about my failure to grasp what was really going on with the strategy overview. You've changed that, not just this year, but over the past couple of years. So I, for one, greatly appreciate that. I think it now more than ever goes a long way toward informing the work that we do here and certainly going forward. Last thing, Madam Chair, it strikes me that in terms of, and I know you focused on highlights and progress, I would imagine one of the biggest challenges to this work, and maybe this is always the case with your work, is time, having the time to do it in a day, in a year, over the course of the next couple of years. Any other challenges that are worth sharing with us? Is it time? Is it resources? Is there anything we as a school committee should be focusing on or to be aware of in that regard? And I realize that's a kind of a macro question, but if any of you can take a shot at it, that would be great. Or you, Superintendent.
I think time, we have 3 professional development days, and we cram those in and try to get as much as we can out of those, and then try to be creative. I think we have planned in the upcoming year, we have a pretty strong habit of ongoing data meetings with staff and it's an opportunity where we sort of embed professional development, where we meet with teachers and let's look at our data for students from the fall, and we do it 3 times a year, and in the past years we even did it as often as 5. And it was an opportunity because you get so busy and you look at the data, but it helps to have other people to collaborate with and sort of sit and then looking at that data and then making plans for your students based upon that data. and then getting feedback from your students, and then re-envisioning what you're doing in your classroom. And so getting in that cycle of assessing, teaching, and then checking students' progress, and then reflecting, and then assessing again and teaching, and getting in that continuous cycle. So the leadership is quite creative, and I think finding staff coverage sometimes. I think right now we're hopeful that we can find continued substitutes and daily student supports to support that work. I think I'm hopeful that some of the staffing challenges can be overcome as we continue hiring into the fall. But as you know, it's been challenging across all industries to find employees. So I'm a little worried about that, but I'm hopeful as we go into the fall. So I would say time is, I can't think of any other resource.
Time, I'll second that, and I think, just like we talk about student voice, I think that there's certainly an effort to have teacher voice in all of this process, and time plays a huge factor in that, because summer comes and we still do have a ton of educators in Melrose participating in different ways, and then the school year comes and they're teaching a full school day, and we're trying to find different blocks of times to bring folks together to kind of plan some of this out. So I think one of the other things you touched on with kind of seeing the strategy overview in a more accessible way is we're starting to see a lot of these different efforts that we're doing kind of get streamlined together, even when we're looking at, our tiered systems of support, and it's going to be a lot easier and save us some time where we're not duplicating as many efforts throughout the school day and school year, that we're starting to really see some good results with that. So I think we're pretty excited to put some of this stuff to practice this year.
A benefit of the technology has been the ability to meet virtually with teachers. So there are groups of teachers who are working this summer on helping us curate all the great social emotional curriculum that was created. And they're meeting virtually. Let's meet at 6 o'clock after the day is over, and we can meet and collaborate. So I think that has opened up an enormous amount of possibilities. Because I'm willing to meet at 6 o'clock in my pajamas to discuss SEL curriculum from home on the couch. And so I think that's been a great, there's another group of elementary educators who are with Ms. Acevedo are looking at our math and ELA curriculum into the fall to say, how do we accelerate learning progress, student learning, and they're meeting virtually. And so that provides an enormous opportunity. And all of that work is, we're so grateful to all of the educators willing to help us with that work this summer. And I'm grateful to everyone who I asked to say, can you help us with? And they say, oh, okay, I'm not sure how to do this, but if you help me, I'm willing to give some time. So we're super grateful to the educators who give us their time for this work.
And
Terrific.
the only thing I would add is your continued support. So we're really committed to being bold and courageous around equity, and that requires your support for all of us so that our teachers feel safe to take risks and know that we have their backs and you have our backs. That's really, really important as we reimagine our curriculum, to ensure that there's more representation and windows and mirrors across the content areas as we continue to look at the way that we level and unlevel things. Really, that is big, bold work that we're doing, and our teachers are all in, and our leaders are all in. So knowing that you have our backs gives us even more encouragement to continue down that path.
Very good. Thank you very much. Very helpful. Wonderfully comprehensive, and again, accessible, approachable. To build on what you said, Superintendent, I think we as a school committee have an obligation to do our part in sharing this with the community. I think you've done a wonderful job sharing it with us year after year, again, every year better and better. But this is the kind of work that we as a body need to be sharing, do a better job of sharing with the community, because it is, where we are and where we're going. And it's important that not just that we know about it as the governing body, but the community knows about it. And I think it provides, numerous opportunities to create buy-in on the part of the community. So we need to do better with that. Madam Chair, if I can ask a follow-up to the superintendent. Superintendent, you're finishing your first year. You've clearly found a school district that's has been making a significant commitment to personalized learning. What's your take on it as a fresh set of eyes coming in? Where's your head on this? What do you make of it?
Yeah, so I'll try to keep it brief. The first thing I will say is that I'm beyond impressed with the work that's happening in the district. I take zero credit for it, and I think I've said to you before that I feel like I've been handed this very precious thing, if you will, that is the Melrose Public Schools, and see my job as just to make sure that all of these amazing educators have the resources that they need to continue to do the work. I'm beyond proud, beyond words, proud to be the superintendent here in Melrose and to see the progress that we made this year. And it was such a fulfilling process, like taking one objective a month and taking time together as a leadership team to be like, wow, we did so much. It felt like all we did was respond to COVID, but that isn't at all the end of the story. And in some ways, as much as we focus on how do we tell our story better, how do we celebrate all that's happening, there's too much to even celebrate. I mean, you see how long our presentations are and how much information we try to pack into them for you, just to give you a little window, and there's so much more. We're on the right track. We are doing so many really great things, and the thing I'm most excited about this year is just connecting all those dots and helping the community understand the alphabet soup that is all of the acronyms we rattle off, but knowing that it's all about really weaving these pieces together and creating not just a safety net, but a support for all of our kids. And the people here in Melrose, that was the first thing I heard when I said, what do you love about Melrose? Everyone said the people. It's true. I've never seen educators work as hard as the leaders and teachers in Melrose.
Great. Thank you for that. And again, thank you all for the work. Much appreciated.
Ms. Driscoll.
Thank you. I echo thanks and appreciation for this incredible work. It's no surprise you folks are so dedicated, and you never take credit for yourselves. You always give it to your team. So take a little for yourself, right? So great job. I was delighted to see that the self-reported strengths in social emotional learning, and I hope that that does align with what is evidence also. But it was nice to see that people feel that they are competent in that area and are doing good work in that area. So I think it's really positive. I thought you were very candid in the presentation about where you were looking to be and where your growth areas were, and I think that's hard. But I think it also models what you want to see your educators doing, which to Dr. Kuchenberger's point is really taking those risks and putting yourself out there in order to have something to sort of put a stake in the ground, right? We need to work towards this. How are we going to get there? How are we going to do that? And the strategy overview clearly does that. So I thought that was great. I did have a question. Google Data was referenced, and I presume that Google Data is at least one of the tools you're using in your data assessments. And I was just wondering, and I should remember this, but I don't, in the PD plan, whether Google Data was an element of the training. Is it part of also the new teacher training when they come in, or is that scaffolded later on? How does that work? Because it seems like quite an authentic and useful tool.
So we did some training of some leaders in the spring to sort of figure out how to use it ourselves. And Ms. Acevedo and Mr. Cristiano did some training this summer with some teachers who created some amazing new ways to use Google Data Studio. I don't think our new teachers are going to be up for Google Data Studio early on, but it's certainly a tool that we want to continue to share and use with staff. There's also using the tool to create and visualizations of your own data, But there's also just using the tool, like I create one and I share it with you, and you use it in order to visualize the data as a whole community. So we've been using it to visualize academic data. We're planning to use it to visualize social emotional learning data with teachers. So it's a tool that we can use with our educators to help them visualize and sort of funnel down into, we can look at data by various variables. And so it's a tool we can use, as well as continue to train folks to use it to help them use data and visualize data and really have data speak to questions that you have, and sort of using it to help generate growth and improvement. So it's exciting to be able to take large spreadsheets and sets of data and be able to visualize it in a way that everyone can understand, even if they can't create an Excel spreadsheet with all the graphs and that many of us have done in the past. This is a much quicker and efficient way to do all of that work that many of us used to do in Excel that took forever. So it's exciting.
I think where we did try it with all of our elementary teachers were able to experience what it looks like at one of our last curriculum meetings, and the feedback that we got back from them was that it was a much nicer way to kind of look at things, and it made things understandable quickly. Like, they've gotten really good at digging into data, but being able to see it visually really quickly and be able to do things like pair our academic data with our demographic data and look for, inequities in some of that work is much easier with Data Studio than it is with anything else we've been able to do so far. Data Studio also has a great feature where it runs on your Google address, so your Gmail address, so teachers, we as leadership can see school-wide and district-wide, but teachers, we have the ability to create data studios where they only see their data, so they can see kind of where are my students right now, and where do I want them to go.
And by giving teachers just-in-time data, they can make just better, quicker decisions for student learning, assess, and create materials and better meet student needs. And so as we go back next year, that we know this is going to be so important for the acceleration of student learning. So that's exciting to be able to continue to leverage that tool and use it with teachers. So
Excellent. And that's part of the Google Education Suite? Yep.
Sort of, yes,
Okay.
but it's part of
It's
the Google,
aligned
yes,
with...
It's part of the Google umbrella.
So I just want to point out that taxpayer dollars are being well deployed in the interest of student learning, once again. I did think that sort of the focus on student portfolios, digital portfolios, is just so exciting. And I loved your examples. And thank you for answering the question around virtual meeting options. I'm glad to hear that those will continue. And I'm also glad that you mentioned Mr. Cristiano, because obviously you had a student who wants to be a librarian, and I was reading today that the population of school librarians has decreased by 20%, which is a big concern. So clearly there's someone who will eventually follow in his footsteps. So that is delightful to see. Thank you so much. Wonderful presentation.
Ms. McAndrew.
Thank you, and I fully endorse all the thanks and appreciation, including for your time tonight. Thank you. I have one comment or suggestion and one question. The suggestion is around this blue chart, which is just one piece of an excellent presentation. I hope that there will be a way to share this with parents directly throughout the school year and to remind them of where we are in the assessment. I think this focus on progress monitoring this year is going to be so important, and that might be a little bit new to some students, especially regular education students who are not in receiving interventions, not assessment necessarily, but the progress monitoring. And I think providing parents with this chart and also maybe some examples of what that looks like in their child's classroom. So what does the curriculum embedded assessment look like in 2nd grade or 10th grade? I think that would be really helpful insight for parents, because, I mean, this is just, last year was a year like no other, we said, but so will this year be, because we'll be, really accelerating students' learning. I've heard a lot from parents about the agreement with the importance of that. So that would be my suggestion to the team. And my question is around, kind of along the same lines, actually, around the digital portfolios, I agree the work is amazing and really interesting to see the examples. One thing about it, though, on the other hand, is that it can be harder for parents to see student work because, and it's certainly a good thing for the environment when all that paper is not coming home, but it can be a little harder to sort of see that work and see how their kids are doing sometimes. And so I guess I'm interested in hearing from you all, what are the strategies for explaining digital portfolios to parents and then helping them access where their kids are when they're using some of these very new and different ways of, in some cases, even taking tests and assessment and doing projects.
So a digital portfolio, there's sometimes a misconception of that's where all student work goes. That's kind of the dumping ground of what it is. And we're trying to work really hard as a district to help students understand that that's a place where they can showcase or that they can reflect and show progress towards their goal, but that shouldn't be the end-all, be-all by any means. I think a lot of teachers are moving things digitally for a number of reasons, and thinking about how do we support that by either being better about explaining to parents, what can you see in Google Classroom versus what you can't, and helping kind of with some of those technology pieces. I think when we think about student-led conferences is where we're hoping to go. That's where we're really trying to help students understand that the portfolio is for an authentic audience. And their family might be part of that authentic audience, but it might also be the larger community. So trying to get those two pieces tied together has been a vision, I think, for the past few years of how do we take those portfolios that have been very personal to students and very personal to learners and share them with the bigger world, and how does that help show not only the students' progress, but how does that help kind of bring the families into the conversation of here's where I was in September, here's what my work looked like, here's my goal I set for myself, and here's all the steps I took to try to get better at that goal, and the reflections that I made as I went through.
So Mel talked about a sense of audience, so that your work has a sense of audience, and it's something that we were trying to promote. I think that as the spring came around, we started, teachers were it was just an exhausting year, and sort of asking them now, how do you get your students to share their work, their portfolios, their exhibitions? So we highlighted the 10th grade, the 8th grade, the passion projects from the elementary, like let's give the kids a sense of audience, which then allows them to see, oh, next year when you have that other project, I know I'm going to have to share this with the community, so I'm going to do my best work right from the beginning. And we've done that in the past with writing, and one of the benefits, the pandemic and technology, is we have this virtual way to invite people into our classrooms to provide more of a sense of audience, which can be exciting. And it's something we can hopefully leverage next year as we start fresh and finding opportunities to give students a sense of audience where they're sharing their work, even if it's digital or even if it's old school paper and pencil. I think we've learned this summer that, as you saw in some of the examples, low-tech is also a good option. So, especially for our younger students who spent a lot of year on devices and now need paper and pencil. So, and I think Mr. Merrill would agree that even our older students would benefit from some more options for paper and pencil as well. So we're going to have to look to balance technology. We really want to use technology for that creation process, and that sharing and collaboration that it allows, but also leverage what happens with all the great things that happen when communities come together and communities of young people come together to work collaboratively that don't require a device, but require low-tech paper, pencil, chart paper, markers, art supplies, and all those other tools that are a different type of technology. So.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor.
First, I want to thank you for sharing the thoughts of the student who's interested in being a librarian. It is terrific to see a student that recognizes the value of investing in our public libraries, and I would like to meet with her and chat with her a little bit about that in the next month or two. But I'm really, in all seriousness, I'm interested in hearing a little bit more about the crew program. It looks like a terrific idea. I'm wondering, one of the slides mentioned crew captains. Is that the faculty member that will be leading the group?
Yes, the crew captain is the teacher in the room, and we're going to have some crew admirals who kind of take the lead by grade level, and the two assistant principals are calling themselves something, commanders maybe, to oversee their grades.
What are you, the admiral?
I don't.
Commander-in-Chief.
I'm the chef.
He's manning the lighthouse.
So, yeah, we've really been kind of thinking about this in different ways for a couple of years and seen some great examples in some different schools across New England. And we have a lot of things that'll take place in there. We do, but we have to pull kids out of class and do different ways to get to kids. Like one of the examples, guidance counselors with their work with Naviance, and some of the work they do with college readiness, and even, some of the seniors right off the bat in crew are going to be doing some work on college applications and essays and searches and things like that. And 10th graders will be starting to do the Naviance inventory about college and career interest. Some weeks they'll all be doing the same thing. We'll be talking about a similar subject. And then some weeks the seniors are going to do one thing, the 9th grade is rolling out portfolios, the 10th grade is having a class meeting, and the 11th grade is starting to think about the Civics Project, for an example. So there's going to be a lot of great stuff. We have too much, so we're trying to really streamline what's going where, but we're really excited about the opportunities, and it's another example. The high school, we're constantly preaching community relationship building, as you know, but it's essential and important. And this is a different kind of community where it's a light community. You all have something in common, which is your grade, but you might not know each other. You might know some well, and it's about forming those relationships, and some are going to go faster than others, and some are going to be more collaborative. And it's also really important to be able to work with people that you haven't built that solid relationship with yet. So it's another way for us to model some of that relationship building. So we're really excited about the opportunity. It fits well into our schedule. It's going to help kids on Monday morning plan out their week, their schedule. What tests do they have? Major projects. Having those conversations about that test on Friday in biology that everyone in the room has. And to think about what am I going to do with flex block? How am I going to use that time on Wednesday? What else do I have? Do I have work? Do I have games? Do I have a rehearsal? So a lot of our kids need some of that time, that targeted time, to really plan it out. So that's why it's falling on Monday morning.
Well, good. So I know it's subject to a very complex scheduling system, but is it essentially, do you imagine it being a randomly populated subject to the scheduling?
The group of students?
Yeah.
Will be, so for instance, it'll be randomly populated within a guidance counselor's caseload within the grade. So we want each crew to have the same guidance counselor. So it's one guidance counselor that would be assigned to 5 9th grade crews, 5 10th grade crews, and so on, so they can easily access those students when they're supporting the crew. And so within that group of students, it'll be randomly populated. So there'll be some similarities because we break up caseloads for guidance counselors by alphabet, as you probably know. So there's a good chance there's some similar beginning of the alphabet in the same crew, but they'll be randomly populated.
And I think you said that the idea is to keep these kids together all 4 years?
Correct.
But you're not starting just with 9th grade. In the fall.
No, everyone's going to have a crew. Everyone will be in a crew on day one.
Awesome.
And they'll be in there on the first day of school, and you'll stay. So if if you have a 12th grade crew as a teacher, you'll get a new 9th grade the following year. But outside of that, you'll stay in loop each year.
It sounds terrific. Thank you.
What's exciting too is that is an example when we're looking at high schools across New England in personalized learning. This is a way to personalize a large comprehensive high school and make with the advisory and the crew system. So that's exciting to see it. And I commend the high school staff and Mr. Merrill
Sounds terrific.
for
Kudos.
this effort.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Welcome. Okay, so anyone else? Any other questions, comments? I just want to say, I think it was like 6 years ago when the competency-based task force was created. It was, how many years ago now? Was it 6, 7? Yeah, here I was. Little did I know I'd be here. But no, the personalized learning piece of what went from competency-based education to personalized learning, and you guys, the whole team, all the leadership, all the teachers, it's amazing what it's become, and it has become personalized learning, AKA Melrose, so it's very exciting. And the strategy overview has been elegantly simplified because I think it used to be like, okay, we're going to add on this next thing, and then we're going to add on this next thing, and we're going to add on this next thing. It seems like while you're doing a tremendous amount of work still, it seems much more focused and readable. I agree with it, Mr. O'Connell.
I think, Dr. Kuchenberger, you should share what you shared with us today, that it's a model, because I didn't know that, and they probably do not know, and I think we should be proud of that.
You should be very proud of the strategy overview and the evolution that it's had over time. So back in 2014, I think it was even a model in the new superintendent's induction program. This overview, I saw it well before I even knew where Melrose was. So you should all be very proud of that, and the fact that this team has continued to revisit it and refine it as our context has shifted.
So I'm mindful of time, but one request that I would have is so we can understand better if we took like one of the strategic priorities in one of the boxes, for instance, strengthen the implementation of inclusive, culturally responsive practices through UDL, which is Universal Design for Learning, and technology integration to support personalized learning. That's 2A. If we could just give examples of that without the name of a student, like, okay, here's a 5th grade student who is not at grade level. Here's a 5th grade student at grade level. This is how we personalize. This is how we make it culturally responsive, because I think as you mentioned, we throw a lot of words around, and some people in the profession understand them. Sometimes we're still working to understand them, but it would be good for us to really try to show examples of it in like live, Because I think one of the things that can happen is when you talk about equity, people can be saying, well, that means we're going to go to the lowest common denominator and stay there, versus equity and personalized learning coming together. I think Desi was saying, bring up the floor. Let's bring up the floor. So we want to bring up the floor. And then we also want to shoot to the stars for every single student that can go there, right? And whatever that means. So anyway, sorry. Just had to mention a few things like that. Okay. So we're going to move on now because we have other things on this agenda. But thank you very, very, very much for the wonderful presentation and the work that you're doing. And for weathering the storm with us, metaphorically and literally.
And to my colleagues, if you're welcome to stay, but if you'd also like to call it a night, because you've been at it since 7 a.m., I invite you to do that as well.
So the next piece of business is a policy piece of business related to the rules of order that we use as a school committee. And we decided to take the other policies off that we were going to vote on today and just focus on this for just a few minutes, knowing that we were going to spend a lot of time on the strategy overview. So because we have a very experienced school committee member, I'm going to call on Ms. Driscoll to just go over with us a little bit about the rules of order for review here tonight.
So thank you for your work on this, and thanks for all the policy work you guys are doing. It's really substantial and much appreciated. So I guess for this one, I would just, I was, at the conference I was at, last time, there was a session on Robert's Rules of Order, which was actually very interesting, and apparently there is a new one out that became effective in 2020, and so I wonder if we would want to add some language to this that spoke to the latest version of Robert's Rules of Order without naming that version, since that will always encourage us to be current and follow things, especially in the area of technology, which I understand there's some changes relative to technology in there that we might want to explore. Not necessarily anything that I can think of off the top of my head that would pertain to what we do, but that's just an example of something where they're trying to evolve also. So, you know, I think this is great, and I would make a motion for passage, adding the language, the latest version of Robert's Rules of Order, newly revised, will govern the proceedings.
Second.
Very good. I just want to say that historically, it's been helpful to use the rules of order, especially when we're dealing with controversial issues. It gives us an anchor through storms. So, excuse me for not knowing this, because I still need to study the rules of order even more. Are we going to take a vote right now? Is that what we do next? Okay. So, can you please call the roll?
You don't need
I think we can just do yays and nays, just all in favor.
Okay. Who is in favor of adopting this policy? All in favor. That would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 in favor and 1 absent. Okay. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Ms. Razzie Thomas. Next up, we have Finance and Facilities with Ms. Driscoll.
Ms. McAndrew, can we suspend the rules for a minute and have Mr. Fogarty come up regarding the matter that he's here for? That way he can exit in a timely manner, because it's getting late. Is that possible?
Is Mr. Fogarty here for an agenda item?
Is he here?
He was here
think so.
for an item that was in the consent agenda.
The concussion
For the
report?
concussion report, yeah.
Yep.
Which passed already.
Yep.
Okay.
Oh,
Okay.
let's
Thank
hear
you.
him or cut him loose.
Thank you so much. We have one agenda item this evening, which is the Chartwells contract amendment number 2. So I will invite the superintendent to speak to that, and if she would like to invite Ms. Secor or not, that is certainly up to you.
You read my mind. Ms. Secor, would you please come to the mic and introduce this item to the committee, please?
Good evening. So in your packet, as you can see, is amendment number 2 for the Chartwells 2022 school year. In comparison to the previous years, you will notice that the management fee, the management fee has gone up a little bit and the administrative fee has gone down a little bit, so it really has not a very little impact on the district. This is amendment number 2. This year will be the last year, and we will be revisiting it on next fiscal year. It was approved by the Department of Education as well.
Very good. For purposes of discussion, may I have a motion?
Motion to
Motion
approve.
made by Ms. McAndrew.
Second.
Seconded by Mr. O'Connell. Is there discussion or any questions on this motion? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? That motion carries 6 in favor with 1 absent for approval. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Driscoll. Next up is Educational Programs and Personnel with Mr. O'Connell. Thank you.
Superintendent, I know you're fascinated with this musical chairs thing here in Melrose. So under Educational Programs and Personnel, we have one item. It's with regard to the Assistant Superintendent recruiting and hiring process. For those who don't know, and I think everyone here knows, Ms. White Lambright is planning her escape from our longstanding grasp here in the Melrose Public Schools. Can you tell us where we are in terms of recruitment and hiring?
Sure. So in your packet, you have, what I tried to do was create a high-level overview, but also create transparency for the community so that they could see the process. This is a very important role. If you were to look at the job description, you would see that there's an immense amount of responsibility that falls under this role. Part of our work has been to analyze, anytime there's a retirement or a resignation, we see that as an opportunity to revisit, to assess, to look at the district's needs, and then make any adjustments. So there are some items that we think could be moved off the plate of this role because of the enormity of just supporting the special education department in and of itself, not to mention the personnel aspects of the job. So that's an ongoing dialogue, and really part of the final determinations will be based around who the finalist becomes, right? Because every one of us brings different strengths and opportunities. So another thing that we do is look at the composition of our team and say, okay, where do our strengths currently lie, and where are there, potentially gaps or places where we need reinforcement and additional support. And as you know, HR is an opportunity for improvement here in Melrose because we don't currently have a dedicated administrator of HR. The responsibilities are sort of divided and shared across multiple positions. So what you have in your packet on the second page is, on the first page, I'll just say there is an opportunity for the community, the entire community, to engage in the process. So we're looking for people to serve on the actual search committee, but then we're also looking for members of the community to share their thoughts, to share questions that they want to make sure that we're answering, or skills and attributes that we're looking for in our next Assistant Superintendent of Pupil and Personnel Services. So that's linked right there on page 1 under community engagement for all to access. And then we'll use that information as we're making the decision and determination. So this is a large search committee because this is a position that interacts with lots of stakeholders. And so our goal in all of our search committees is to create a diverse committee that's able to look through multiple lenses in order to ensure that we're finding the best and right fit for the Melrose Public Schools. So I won't read every single person on the list to you, but you can see that there in your packet. And then you also have the timeline. So the position has been posted since Monday, July 19th. I just looked at this before the meeting, and I think we have 12 candidates that have applied so far. I'm able to see those candidates as they're coming in and review their packets, but ultimately we will form a subcommittee of the search committee once the members of the search committee are identified on August 2nd, who will participate in some anti-bias training that's becoming a part of our normal interviewing practice for all positions. But we're not going to have the 20-plus members reviewing every single applicant. There will be some applicants that just aren't viable. They may not have the proper certification or the background that we would look for in a candidate. And the idea is to narrow it down to, 6 folks is kind of our target, 6 candidates that we want to invite out for interviews. And those folks will interview with the full search committee as you see listed here. Prior to the interviews happening, anti-bias training will happen for the committee, the full search committee. They will also have an opportunity to come in and review the resumes in a confidential space so that they can begin to think about potential fit and any interview questions that they'll have. We'll agree upon the questions that will be asked during the interview. There may be a performance task associated. Well, there will be some sort of a performance task. And we've been talking about, Dr. Adams and I have been talking about what exactly is the right performance task. So that is something that's underway in development. And then right now on the calendar, we have 2 nights scheduled for long windows of interviews. However, we have asked folks who are interested to kind of clear the deck during that week of interviews in case we need to add additional time slots. And then we're also planning to hold community forums. As I mentioned earlier in the recruitment and hiring process, this is a practice that is a routine for us, and it has been really valuable in providing lots of voices in the process. And all of that feedback gets analyzed in addition to the performance tasks, and I'll use that information to make the final recommendation to you all. My hope is to be able to bring a recommendation to you on September 14th. And we know that Ms. White-Lambright's last day is scheduled for late October, so ideally there would be some time for overlap, but it'll be really dependent on their circumstances and what we're able to arrange, given whoever the finalist becomes.
Great. So obviously, community participation is a key part of this. My recollection is we've got a deadline coming up this week, Thursday. Have you been, we're talking about it right now, have you otherwise been sharing this process with folks? Has it been out on social media or other outreach to the school community?
So we have put the search committee application, if you will, this Google form that you see linked here, out to all staff, as the majority of the positions are staff positions. And then we've worked directly with CPAC to identify candidates that may be, number one, available, but also a good fit for the search committee. Again, wanting to make sure that we have diversity on the committee. And that's not just, racial or ethnic diversity, but also diversity in thinking and experiences within the Melrose Public Schools. The students, I'll work with the high school administration to identify students who have both the availability but experience with the pupil personnel services, so students who've been out of district and have come back, students who have IEPs, students who have 504s, or even just students who, are accessing other counseling and support services, because that all falls under, it could be any student because guidance is under this position as well. So we're working with high school to identify those folks, and I've worked with school committee chair McAndrew to identify 2 school committee members to be a part of the committee as well.
And the community input form, is there a deadline for that, or is that just going to be a rolling thing?
So it'll be until we hire someone, really.
Okay.
I'm checking it regularly again, so as that information's coming in, using that to inform. Some folks have said, like, here's a question I want you to ask, or here's a question I think is really important, or we need someone who's going to look at this specific aspect of this position. So it's really helpful, and we hope that many folks will take advantage of that, but we will push that out at multiple times so folks can be reminded. I know not everyone's checking their emails regularly in the summer.
Terrific, thanks. Any comments or questions from the committee at this time? Seeing none, thank you for the work, as always. And let me be the first of many to thank Ms. White-Lambright for her service. I'm sure we're going to be doing that for the next several months. And it's worth our time in doing so for her great work on behalf of the district. That concludes educational programs and personnel this evening. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. O'Connell.
As we transition, I'll just add that we've also had a teacher that's retired or announced their retirement since we just celebrated folks in June. So we're talking about the best and right time. We're thinking December might be a good time to honor any additional retirees that we didn't get to honor in June, rather than making them wait a whole nother year. I think we have 3 scheduled so far.
All right, thank you. Hello again, everyone. Now we are on to announcements of the chair. And first up from the consent agenda, we have the meeting minutes of June 22nd. For purposes of discussion, is there a motion to approve the meeting minutes? Made by Mr. O'Connell, seconded by Ms. Razzie Thomas. Any comments on the meeting minutes? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? Abstain? And those pass with 5 in favor, 1 abstention, and 1 absent. Thank you all very much. Next up for a vote is the superintendent's evaluation, final report and comments, which in the packet, all of you know, but for the public as well, are the superintendent's evaluations from each committee member, as well as the overall summary, executive summary of the superintendent's evaluation. And just to, I'm not going to read the whole thing, but just to highlight that overall, members rated the superintendent's performance as proficient with a rating of 3.3 out of 4. According to DESE, proficient practice is understood to be fully satisfactory and is the rigorous expected level of performance. Superintendent Kuchenberger did surpass this high standard in some areas, which are detailed in the report. Across the 4 standards from the 7 members, she received 19 proficient ratings and 9 exemplary ratings. We do need to vote on the summary evaluation. Ms. Driscoll?
Motion to approve.
Motion to approve made by Ms. Driscoll, seconded by Mr. Obremski. Are there any comments on the evaluations? Mr. O'Connell?
One of the great things about being chair is that you get to work very, very closely with the superintendent. Ms. McAndrew is discovering that, and Ms. Driscoll knows it full well. I also know the mayor has worked very closely with the superintendent, and I suspect others of my colleagues who are with us tonight will have the opportunity in the coming years as well. Having had that experience, both with Ms. Tamor and then with Dr. Kuchenberger, particularly, we say this all the time, it's getting old, but particularly given the year we had, I just, I'll let my evaluation speak for itself specifically, but really an outstanding job. And, as someone who was in the room for a lot of the meetings and the struggles and the work that was done, I can't thank you enough. And to see that kind of leadership from the get-go, from day one, from before day one, for someone who just got here in the kind of year we had, again, outstanding. So thank you very much for the work.
Thank you.
Greatly appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. O'Connell. Any other questions? Before we vote, just let me add my thanks to you as well, and also to your family for all of your dedication and hard work and the very long hours devoted to our students and our educators and the community this year. So thank you. All in favor of the executive summary report? And that carries unanimously with 6 in favor and 1 absent. Thank you all. Next up is the superintendent's salary review and adjustment. There is a memo, 2 documents in the packet here, a memo from me with a recommendation that we approve a salary increase for the superintendent of 3% for fiscal '22. And also in the packet is the City of Melrose school executive salary chart that has been approved previously by the school committee and the city council. What is the will of the committee here? Mr. O'Connell.
I would move to approve the recommended 3% increase.
Second.
Motion to approve the 3% increase made by Mr. O'Connell and seconded by Ms. Razzie Thomas. Are there any questions, comments on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor? And that carries unanimously. Thank you all. 6 in favor and 1 absent. Next, so many announcements of the chair tonight, folks. We have an opportunity, a great opportunity, to appoint our delegate and alternate delegate to the Massachusetts Association of School Committees Annual Delegate Assembly, which this year takes place on Saturday, November 6th, which is right adjacent to our annual conference. So at this time, I'll open discussion for anyone who may be interested in serving as our delegate.
I nominate Lizbeth Salm.
Since Mr. Selma's not here to speak for herself, I think we'll table that nomination.
Does it be a current member?
It does. I will say that I many of us plan to go, so I'm happy to jump in if, yes, Ms. Driscoll.
I would just, this is not a motion.
Oh, darn.
This is not a nomination either for myself.
Perfect.
Since Liz has done this work in the past, I wonder if she has an interest, and I'm wondering if we can table this discussion until the next meeting when she may be able to speak for herself.
Absolutely. So we will postpone this agenda item add it to the agenda for our next
For the record, I
meeting.
expect that my nomination will be vindicated at the next meeting.
Okay.
Thank you.
We'll remember it fondly. Thank you all. Actually, that's a motion to postpone, so let's take a vote. A motion to postpone this agenda item to our next meeting, made by Ms. Driscoll, seconded by Mr. O'Connell. All in favor And that carries unanimously with one absent. Thank you. Now, and finally, are there any outreach reports this evening? Seeing none, is there a motion to adjourn? Made by Mr. Obremski, seconded by Ms. Driscoll. All in favor? And that motion also carries unanimously with one absent. Thank you all. Good night.